Hello everyone, RetroCon here. Today, we'll be looking at a seldom mentioned, yet rather popular, asymmetric multiplayer horror game. A game where the biggest threat to your existence and longevity are not the roaming eldritch abominations, but rather the very real and very challenged humans blundering about the facility. A game for masochists and sadists alike to roleplay their deepest and darkest fantasies, where expecting teamwork and camaraderie in the face of overwhelming adversity will get you killed, and where the only path to survival is to be the most cunning and treacherous of individuals. Developed by Northwood Studios through Patreon funding and released to Steam on December 2017, today I introduce you to SCP Secret Laboratory. Now, before we start talking about the game, I am obligated by my enigmatic and quite dangerous masters to set the stage. Let me explain. The origins of the SCP universe date back to 2007, with SCP-173 being introduced by the quite special paranormal enthusiasts of 4chan. In the beginning, it was great. There were a ton of talented writers generating a sophisticated tapestry of lore surrounding various SCPs. But then something happened. Something that would spell demise for the SCP universe. It started to become mainstream. And soon, they arrived. The casuals. And with them came a horde of terrible stories and plot holes filled with Mary Sues and self-inserts. It got so bad that to this day there are still various references, documents, and even SCPs dedicated to the very concept of the self-insert. Fables tell of janitors who tirelessly worked to erase all remnants of that era from the site. And the worst part, they did it for free. Fortunately, SCP Secret Laboratory grabs inspiration from the early days of the universe, when it was actually good. In this alternate reality, SCPs roam the lands and are contained by the Foundation, an inscrutable and mysterious organization dedicated to safeguarding humanity against the entities known as SCPs. Now, I have said SCPs quite a few times, and you might be wondering what they are, so let me tell you. SCPs are anomalous entities, otherworldly phenomenon if you will, that fall under three distinct containment classes. They are classified as either safe, Euclid, or Keter. An example of a safe SCP would be SCP-207, which might look like a modest bottle of cola, but make no mistake, it has been laced with enough pre-workout stimulants to instantly induce cardiac arrest for anyone foolish enough to use it. Meanwhile, a Euclid SCP would be one like SCP-018. But RetroCon, this is just a child's toy, you might say. But make no mistake, this ball defies Newtonian laws of motion and will exert a force of unequal magnitude on collision. In other words, it will accelerate on impact with another object. If you drop this ball, or simply jostle it a bit too hard, it will start a cascading effect of increasingly dangerous velocity that will cause skin to bruise, ribs to fracture, and eventually skulls to crack. Lastly, we have our Keter classification. SCPs that fall under this category are extremely dangerous and should be avoided at all costs. SCP-173 is one such SCP. When you first glance upon it, you will notice an uncanny mess of concrete and rebar. You blink. Was it always this close? There is no third chance. Your cervical vertebrae will be utterly destroyed, resulting in instantaneous death. Keter-class SCPs do not have extrinsic motivations, such as ourselves. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be bartered with. They will kill you, simply because it is in their very nature to do so. Alright, enough lore. There are mountains of lore, and we simply do not have the time to discuss it all. Let's get back to the game review. In SCP Secret Laboratory, you play as one of three factions, each with the same objective: kill anyone or anything that isn't on your team, and escape the facility. The first faction is the Foundation, an ancient order of compulsive hoarders that seek to collect any and all entities or objects that are deemed paranormal. This faction is composed of scientists, guards, and a paramilitary mobile task force known as the Nine-Tailed Fox. The next faction is the Chaos Insurgency, an edgy group of teenagers who got tired of being told what to do by the Foundation. They are guided by a mysterious father figure known as the Engine. They seek to hinder and sabotage the Foundation and society whenever possible, and to steal any SCP that can be used for their ends. They are composed of insurgents and D-class personnel. The last faction is a loose coalition consisting of Euclid and Keter class SCPs, as well as a faction known as the Serpent's Hand. The Serpent's Hand are a group of psychotic eco-terrorists who also happen to believe that SCPs deserve human rights and should not be contained, and instead let loose to do things like vote and pay taxes. Fun fact here, but the number of polygons in this game are roughly the same as the number of times I've managed to escape as a D-boy, which is not very many. Now, you might be tempted to think this was a compromise of design choice, so that the game could run even on the most ancient of relics. But the minimum requirements for this game are a 6th generation i5 processor CPU and a GeForce GTX 1050 graphics card. What exactly about this game looks like it needs a mid-tier computer to run? Must be the light rendering algorithm used, I suppose. Also, you can't see squat half the time, so there's that going for it. Sound effects are pretty good. If you enjoy having your eardrums penetrated by the sweet-sounding sound of Casey's PA system, or if you enjoy the deafening cacophony of dozens of audio clips playing at once, then this game has you covered. Real talk though, some sound effects are good, and combined with the music, it can occasionally build a nice ambiance. Now, as for the gameplay itself, well, to put it bluntly, this game is a bit convoluted, and has a rather interesting learning curve that will filter anyone but the most Ritalin-ridden of gamers. Look, if you're going to play this game, just forget about learning this game organically, and instead, cast your pride aside and open up a wiki. Now hold on. Before you think I'm trying to dump on this game, let me say this. I'm just getting the negatives out of the way first. This game is fun. Real fun. You are going to be thrown into one of the most disastrous containment breaches imaginable, and play a part of the worst response force in existence. So, hop on in to one of the servers, preferably with no kill on sight rules. The first class you will probably spawn as is D-class. D-class personnel are basically the elite of the caste system, a slave class who are primarily used as test subjects for horrific SCP experiments. If you spawn as a D-class, or a D-boy as we like to call them, your chances of survival are close to 0. You can be killed in a variety of ways. You could stumble upon a mad scientist on a jihadi mission, or an authoritarian security guard with his finger a little too close on the trigger. If you are too slow to escape, you will probably be killed by the paramilitary group known as the Nine-Tailed Fox, composed mainly of furry cosplayers who typically hold a strict no D-boy policy. Or maybe, and most mercifully, you will just have a chance encounter with an SCP. Your chances of survival might seem grim, but there are ways to improve them. Here's what you do. When the round starts, you're going to have a little bit of time before the guards and SCPs find their way to your zone. Use this time to look for room 914. Along the way, if you find any rooms that are not hallways, you will want to investigate them for spare keycards. If you find one, take it. If not, keep looking for room 914. Once you find it, get inside. If the blast door is closed and you do not have a keycard, pray there are people nearby who will open the door for you. Once you get inside, you will see SCP-914. Set the nozzle to fine, press the button, and run inside the input chamber. Once inside, make sure you have your keycard or coin equipped, and wait. After a few seconds, you will be transported to the output chamber, and you will see your keycard has upgraded, and your coin might have transformed into something useful. Keep doing this until you have a keycard with clearance to open checkpoint doors and exit doors. If the SCPs or guards have not found you yet, get out and start looking for the exit. The SCPs will be nearby now, so be on high alert. Find the exit and make your way up the zones, making sure to avoid anything that isn't another D-boy. Walk slowly and carefully. There is danger everywhere. Make it to the surface and run for safety. Hope you are not being pursued or that you see a helicopter touching down. Run for the exit and you have made it. Next, you can spawn as a scientist. If you are a scientist, find room 914 and lock yourself in. Do not open the door for anyone. Arm yourself with any weapon you can find and then hide, and wait for security guards to come escort you out. If you find yourself being chased by an SCP, make sure to shut the doors on any D-class who have straggled behind you. It should buy you some time to hide. If you spawn as a guard, your primary objective is to kill all D-boys, probably. You will be spending the first minute or so walking around aimlessly at the entrance zone, until you find the checkpoint to the heavy containment zone. You will probably be killed by an SCP here. If you are not, and you miraculously make it to light containment room, find 914 and kill any D-boys there. Now you can worry about saving and escorting any surviving scientists. The last character you can spawn as is an SCP. There are quite a few SCPs, each with unique abilities and different approaches to gameplay. You can spawn as SCP-173, colloquially known as Peanut. You have the powerful ability to be unable to move when spotted, as well as the ability to defecate on the floor in frustration. There is also SCP-096, a deformed man suffering from an extreme case of Asperger's syndrome, who has a rather interesting way of interacting with people. You can spawn as SCP-079, an AI intelligence so supreme that it's mastered the art of trolling, by closing doors on people and SCPs alike. Next is SCP-939, a pack of apex predators who are only slightly more dangerous than pit bulls. Fortunately for you, they're too scared to get LASIK eye surgery, so if you stand perfectly still, they probably won't detect you. You have also got Larry, or SCP-106, a shriveled old man who has the ability to stalk strangers and kidnap them into his snuggle dungeon. There's also the ghost SCP-966, whose only real job is to be incredibly annoying. Lastly, there is SCP-049, which is basically a cosplaying doctor that can kill you on touch and has the extremely annoying ability to revive you and force you to play as a garbage zombie. Every few minutes or so, there will also be additional reinforcements introduced into the game. These can be either the Mobile Task Force or the Chaos Insurgency. Regardless, your job is to throw your body into the proverbial meat grinder by attempting to kill the SCPs. The last spawn you have is the Serpent's Hand. They tend to only appear if the SCPs are particularly bad and need additional reinforcements. This game is an experience. You are going to be playing with people from all over the intellectual gamut. You will get a metric ton of mic spam, profanity, and general ear torture. But that isn't to say the community is bad. Most people just want to have fun and roleplay as suicidal or egotistical maniacs. So, let me end this review with one distinct story I vividly remember from playing this game. On this round, I spawned as a guard. I quickly did my tours and managed to team up with the other 5 remaining guards, and we began to make our way into the heavy containment zone. Unfortunately, on our way down, we ran into Big Dog, who, working alongside a computer, managed to ensnare some of us. Through the skin of my teeth, I barely survived the encounter, but unfortunately, we had already lost half our numbers. The remainder of us, after assessing our situation and steeling our resolve, continued on our journey. Upon some exploration, we encountered a rogue D-boy, whom we immediately terminated after he made an aggressive and violent gesture, causing us to fear for our lives. Upon his summary execution, we found out he was carrying an O5 card, a card with full access to any room or mechanism in the facility. So, we got an idea, a move that could help us save lives. We began to search the heavy containment zone for a particular room, the room of SCP-106. Upon finding it, we used the O5 card to gain access into the room. If you didn't know, SCP-106 can be banished through the use of a sacrificial lamb, Unfortunately, the lamb has to be a human who would serve as live bait. This most unfortunate of souls will be tortured to death as a means to lure SCP-106. Through some process I do not fully understand, we settled on a guard to be executed. The unfortunate guard digested a concoction of drugs and then flashbanged himself in an attempt to detach his very being from the pain he was about to experience. This didn't work, as his bones were shattered and he hemorrhaged to death. We made the realization that there was no Larry roaming the facility. He perished a gruesome death for nothing. Well, damn. As karma would have it, the two of us didn't last much longer either. As we were about to exit the room, we ran into Peanut, who proceeded to snap our necks. Moral of the story: there are none, just kill all D-boys. Alright then, hopefully you got a grasp for why, despite the shortcomings, this game has a sizable and loyal following. Quite frankly, I hated this game at first, but as I began to learn the controls and learn the mechanics, I began to enjoy it immensely. Between you and me, I really relish in my wanton slaughter of D-class personnel. It satisfies my bloodlust. The game is also completely free, so why not give it a try? Just make sure to get the wiki ready and expect a few rounds of trial and error before you understand what you are supposed to be doing. So, let's give this game a score. I give this game a score equal to the number of D-boys I've killed over the number of SCPs I've died to. Good fun. Go and get it. Alright everyone, thanks for watching and have a beautiful day.